So I want to tell you Sicas' story now. And yes, I do change their names. Sicas' story runs over, well, 2 decades. A little more. It began when she was 13. She fell playing, as children do, into a pothole or something in the yard. Broke her ankle up pretty bad. So they prescribed, and you'll forgive me, I'm going to have to make silly names up for the proper drug name. She was prescribed Perkies, which she wasn't taking. I'll come to that in a moment. But she was laid up on the couch, and I guess the cat jumped up on her. She'd had some surgery on her ankle, tearing open whatever surgery she'd had, and howling in pain. Her father took her to the hospital for some more surgery. At which point, in the hospital, I'm putting some deduction into her story here, as far as the hospital goes anyways. They would have said, well, we see you have a Perky prescription. Is everything okay there? Now, Dad would have said, yeah, no problem. Because Dad was addicted to the ox, I'll call it. He'd sold the Perkies and had bought ox for himself. Now, at this point, Sika was in need of some painkillers, but she didn't know that Dad was giving her what is 10 times stronger and 10 times more addictive than what she'd been subscribed. So moving the story along, I guess Sika's stable home life eroded as her dad's abuse destroyed the marriage. So details there I didn't really get. But anyways, at 17, Sika finds herself pregnant and addicted to the ox. She goes clean because she said, and I quote, I wanted a clean baby. Now, she was with what she referred to as her baby dad for 13 years. They had a second child together 5 or 6 years after the first one. She said things were pretty good. She bounced on and off the ox. And she said, my man had some issues too on occasion, but he worked. Things were good. He was good to me. He never was bad to me. And she was weeping at this point. So, 2020. Yeah, that year. With all the panda foolishness and our governments. Anyways, the husband was tragically lost in an accident. And Sika found herself, partly due to the 2020 circumstance and just circumstance in general, unhoused, as Trudeau likes to refer to it. Now, fortuitously, Sika's mother could take the children in and has them to this day, saving them from the clutches of the states. But for whatever reasons, there was no place for Sika, only her children. So now she's on the street at this point, mourning. Her home, her man, her life is lost, right? Well, the ox led to the funny, pretty quick. Well, there's nothing funny about funny, is there? Other than I find it funny the government seems to encourage it rather than discourage it. Think McKinsey and Company and Justin Trudeau, but that's a separate story. Anyways, I guess she got into the funny pretty bad. Now, I don't really understand doses, but she said she was using between 14 and 18 a day, and I think that's an awful lot. I'm pretty sure it's an awful lot. I just don't know what the scale is. I have no contextual reference. But over the last 4 years, she has managed twice to get off, only to fall back off the wagon again. And so at this point in Sicas' story, I said, so what are you using now? And she unabashedly said, well, you know, I'm having another go at it. She said, I'm down to 2, maybe 4 points a day, which I gather in talking to the people that that is a bare minimum dosage, right? And in talking, I said, well, so what's the plan now? She said, well, I got to get a little bit down more. And I said, what about rehab? And she said, well, there just isn't enough of it. And I said, is it just the funny? And she said, no, I use the jib. That's what it's referred to on the street. I better not say its name either. That's what keeps you awake. She said, well, I use the jib at night because I can't sleep. You know, it's a security issue. I've mentioned that before, and I'll leave well, it's an ugly scene, right? But that stuff doesn't cost anything. The government pretty much just gives it away. I mean, if it has any value on the street at all, it's like the price of a cigarette. It's a sin. But anyways, she is working, she says, I hope very shortly to try and get into another program, but there isn't enough of those. She said, you know, there's just, the resources aren't there. And I said, well, what, you know, do you never sleep in the shelters? Because I know a lot of the street people don't feel secure in the shelters. They don't like going there. She said, oh, no, I don't, you know, it's the lesser of evils as far as security goes, but I don't even try anymore. I've given up that years ago. There just isn't nearly enough beds. So then I went on to discuss with her the other people I'm talking to, what I'm trying to do, and she said, oh, I think I mentioned it in a previous video, the previous video, I guess. She's going to take some notes and try to work with me. She was just exhausted today, right? But we talked again about lockers, because they have nowhere to stash their kit, right? When it's raining, it gets wet. They can't turn their back on it. Somebody steals it. I mean, if it's saleable, somebody who's doing the 14 and 18 a day, not 2 or 4, will steal anything to, you know, supply themselves. I'm not sure what cost is on this stuff. I guess I should maybe find out about that just to put things in context. But she said at one point, because I mentioned, you know, sleeping during the day, getting chased away. They can't settle themselves anywhere. Somebody comes along and chases them out, whether it's security or a homeowner or a business owner or the police, whatever, right? No one has any sympathy for them. She said, yeah, people see us stumbling down the street. She said, yeah, half of the time it's drugs, and she says the other half of the time it's not. I mean, we can't afford drugs every day, you know. I said, no, I get that. I see you guys shaking it rough when you can't, you know, scrape together enough. She said, well, you know, look at me. She says, I'm exhausted. I can hardly really carry on a conversation. It had been emotional in what she was sharing with me as well. Excuse me. But we discussed the locker situation again, and I have some ideas there. She mentioned one of the private, I don't want to name anyone, but a facility, if you will, that has beds and stuff. And she said there's a perfect facility there. The backyard is huge, it's lit, it's cameras and everything. And I said, well, maybe you could talk to them, because I've approached them before, that outfit, that facility, whatever you want to refer to it as. It was kind of just ignored. It was like, yeah, well, don't call us, we'll call you. I said, well, word's getting out now. Maybe I have a plan. I think I can do something with that, perhaps. But anyways, I guess that's the overview of Sicas' story. And, well, I think I'm starting to make some headway. Anyways, that's Sicas' story.